You guys know how much I like to work on my table saw out in the driveway, and you're probably wondering, why is my table saw in the middle of my shop and everything pushed out of the way? It's pouring down rain. Not a good day to be working in the driveway. So yeah, it seemed totally weird to work here in the middle of my shop and not on the workbench. Luckily, I made this smaller workbench last year, so I can kind of drag it around pretty easily. Table saws create a lot of sawdust. I always hook up my shop vac, which takes care of most of it. A table saw can make any kind of straight cut and do it with precision. The main thing you can't do on a table saw is make curved cuts. All table saws come with blade guards, and it would be highly irresponsible for me to advise you not to use them. So if you have a blade guard, use it. I think a blade guard is intended to fulfill two purposes. First, it gives you a visual reminder of where the blade is in relation to your fingers and helps you keep your fingers at a safe distance. Still, if your fingers pass under it, they're not protected. Secondly, a blade guard can help keep wood from falling on the blade. Say if you're making a bunch of cuts and you get careless and one of the boards slips out of your hand and falls on the blade. That said, I find blade guards cumbersome and they make it more difficult for me to see the wood. So I don't use one, but that's my personal preference, and by no means should you take that as advice. Use your blade guard. It seems like sometimes the term riving knife and splitter are interchangeable. It doesn't really matter what you call them as long as you use one or the other, or both. You never want to use a rip fence if the edge of the wood touching the fence is shorter than the length of the board. The board just doesn't have enough surface area against the fence and can bind during the cut, causing kickback. One thing about using a table saw is that eventually you'll start making all kinds of jigs to help you with all kinds of special cuts. I'll cover some of these and some more advanced techniques in a future video. For now, the one jig I recommend everybody have is a crosscut sled. In fact, this could be one of your first projects on your table saw. I have a separate video showing how you can make this one. You can also find tons of other versions online. The main advantage to a crosscut sled is that they usually have two runners to prevent it from wiggling in the miter slots. A miter gauge might have a little play in it, causing your cuts to be slightly out of square. Frederick is asking for a little clarification on how to complete a rip cut running your board along the rip fence. Let me show you what he's asking. The ideal way to make a rip cut is to have both sides of the workpiece supported as you're pushing it through the saw, and to have this side pressed against the fence throughout the entire cut. By using push sticks, I can keep the wood pressed against the table and against the fence as it's going into the saw blade. The problem occurs because once this part of the board is already cut, you can no longer press it against the fence. If you keep pressing in this direction with a push stick past the blade, then you're just pushing this part of your workpiece against the blade. The solution is to only apply pressure against the fence on the front side of the saw blade before it makes the cut. What Frederick is asking about is this part of the cut. After it's already made it past the saw blade, you no longer have pressure applied against the fence. And without pressing it against the fence, it might slide over ever so slightly. First of all, you want to make sure your rip fence is perfectly square against the blade. That'll help out a lot. Secondly, as long as you're pressing the workpiece against your fence before it goes into the blade, the part after the blade isn't as critical. The cut's already been made. Not to turn this into a plug for micro jig, but this is precisely the reason they invented the gripper. It supports both sides of your workpiece and keeps it pressed against your fence throughout the entire cut. What brand of table saw do I have? This is the Porter Cable Model 270 table saw. I don't think they make it anymore. I'm pretty sure Hitachi made the exact same saw. Some of you longtime viewers may remember that that saw was given to me. A bunch of woodworkers online got together and secretly raised funds to buy it for me. It was all headed by Laney Shaughnessy, and all of the people involved in it are listed here on this plaque that he also had made. It was a surprising and special moment that I will never forget. For the first couple of years I did this show, back before it was officially Woodworking for Mere Mortals, I used a little bitty Skill brand saw. It's exactly like a Craftsman table saw. I think it was like $150 or something. That's why I say you can make some really cool stuff off of a really inexpensive table saw. I had a few questions about my comment that you really only need one saw blade, a general purpose or combination blade. Of course, if you're taking woodworking to the next level and doing high-end fine woodworking, then you would probably want to get an assortment of blades such as this. This is a really fine tooth blade. It's like 200 teeth on that one, and it's for cutting good plywood and laminates, and the idea is that you won't get any chip out by using those. Personally, I have never run into problems cutting any kind of wood using a general purpose or a combination blade. Plus, I work so fast and on such a tight schedule that I really don't want to be bothered to have to change blades all the time. But that's just my experience. Should the entire tooth of the blade be above the cut? There seems to be a couple different schools of thought. I don't think that there's any hard and fast rule. I don't have any personal guidelines on that. I just raise the blade to where it's slightly above the wood. What do I think about saw stop technology? They're expensive. If you've got the money, go for it, but it just eliminates the possibility of cutting your finger. Mike wants to know if I wax the surface of my table saw. Sometimes I do. I use paste finishing wax, and every time I wax it, I think I should really do this more often. But I don't. I certainly recommend it. You could do it every week or every couple of weeks. You just apply some paste wax, buff it down, and then your tabletop surface is just super smooth. Thank you all for your questions and comments. I'll be doing more of these basics videos in the future. If you have anything in particular you'd like to see, let me know.